So now we're moving into the actual sustainable design TAA submission. And that begins with basically what we would expect to see in your submission to us. Here on the right-hand side, this is what I would like to see inside of the sustainable design submission folder that comes with your submission. This would include a completed credit checklist, the SPIF in the main folder, and then create individual folders for every credit category, such as location, transportation, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, and so on and so forth, as well as individual folders within those categories for the individual credits, and which then those include the completed template and any backup documentation related to that credit. So like again, this is on the right is an example of what I would prefer to see. This is very easily digestible. Sometimes I get a TAA submission that is, 800 pages in a single PDF. That tends to be a little bit more difficult to review, but doable, but not preferred. Completing the credit checklist. We're going to do a quick video of that process. The completed credit checklist is a dynamic form, so we'll quickly see an example of what that looks like. So this is an example of the ID+C Sustainable Building Guidelines Project Credit Checklist. In the first section, we definitely want you to submit the same information, project information that you would on the SPIF. Make sure that it matches. Everything from date to square footage to who the applicant is. The next section is the actual credits. A very important section here is the available points. This basically will help the credit checklist behave. So if 2 available points are available for that credit, you must account for each point. So here, if I did 0 on the yes and 1 on the no, it doesn't account for all 2 points. So if you're only achieving 1, make sure you put the one that you don't achieve on the no or the maybe. So this is an example of surrounding density, 8 points. If I put 1 on the yes, 1 on the maybe, 2 on the no, we're okay. If it turns red, it means you haven't completed it correctly. So as you can see, all of the points here have been shown. For prerequisites, there is no point allocation. There is a yes or a blank. If it's left blank, then it will be red. But when you are in fact completing it or achieving it, then you click the yes. So as you can see, we're going very quickly through all of the points here and make sure that all the credit points are allocated. When we come down to innovation credits, these do not have an individual. These can be some of them can be actually typed in because different projects will have different innovation credits. So when you see that it's blank, there's 0 available points. But once I start populating it with a credit, it will automatically switch to 1 available point, and then we'll have to account for that point. I believe this. Here you can add as many up to 5 points in this category, depending on what points you're going for. As you can see here, this sample project achieved 45 points with 1 in the maybe. And you can see here that with 45 points, this project will be compliant. Under 40 points, the checklist will show that you're not compliant. Here we went to the second tab of that document, where it basically gives you the opportunity to make a comment or a reference saying, like, for this particular credit, the backup documentation lies within, let's see, C drawing sheet E102. This would be for advanced energy metering. This is telling me where to find the individual tenant meter location. Or you can tell me which spec section I can find this in. This is very helpful to being able to navigate, the many different documents that get submitted. Moving on. So completed credit checklist tips. Again, ensure that the project information is filled out and that it matches the SPIF, and ensure that you're attempting to achieve the 40-point threshold if it is an ID+C or a BD+C checklist. If it is a small projects, know that you need to be attempting more than 0 points. So while there is no minimum amount of points, you cannot submit one that is achieving no points. So for example, if you're doing a quick demolition project of interior millwork, you will have to do construction and demolition waste management at minimum. So 0 points are not will not be accepted. Now we're moving on to the typical credit templates and backup documentation samples. So here's an example of, we're going to go quickly through the different credit categories. We're going to select one or two credits from each one, and just to show you how those get completed. So here we're looking at an example of LT, location and transportation credit for surrounding density and diverse uses. Here we ask you to submit a completed credit template that does identify the rating system that this project falls under, the credit point options, meaning the compliance path. Some of these templates have multiple options for achieving points. So you would select which one, and provide backup documentation that has been, for these projects. Here, I'm going to show you an example of backup documentation that is generated by us. But also, before we move on, you'll see that if I select option 2 on that checklist on where it says all projects, then option 2 on the right-hand side, all the way to the right-hand side, it basically generates a blank table that we will have to start completing with the required information about the different uses that are serving that space. So here's an example of what the backup documentation for an LT credit would be. Again, for most facilities, we have this already. We've done this for you, so definitely check with me, even your tenant coordinator, to see if this information has already been documented for your facility. But if it's not, then this is what we would expect to see. You'd be able to map out the different diverse uses that and building density that serves the space that would basically satisfy the requirements of this credit. For the location and transportation credit, that is the access to quality transit. Here we're demonstrating that this is a 7-point plus an exemplary point project because it is well served by all of the public transportation lines that you see here. In the next credit category, which is the water efficiency, we're looking at the indoor water use reduction, which is the most common one. And it's also a very high yielding point credit that we certainly suggest that you attempt. Provide the completed credit template that identifies, again, the rating system compliance strategy. And here, there's 2 options for doing this. You can either go prescriptive achievement or the usage-based calculation. Now, the prescriptive compliance will only yield a prerequisite. It doesn't give you any points. If you actually want to get points for this, we suggest that you go with the usage-based calculations, and you basically will have to complete a different form that comes with this template, which is the water use calculator, which is an Excel form. You will then take the results of that calculator and transcribe them into this form, where that's where we make the determination as to how many points. But this credit can yield at least 10 points with a possible exemplary performance as well. This is an example of a completed water use calculator. On the left-hand side here, we're basically identifying the fixture types, how many full-time employees, visitors it serves, and then what is the water usage for each fixture, and it calculates it as compared to the 1992 EPA standards. On the right-hand side, we'll have examples of the cut sheets of the fixtures that you are claiming on the calculator. We use this to substantiate what is being claimed on the credits. Moving on this is another high yielding credit. It is the optimized energy performance credit. This is an example of a very dynamic credit template that changes with the options selected. For this, we ask you again to provide the completed credit template that identifies the compliance strategy. All interior projects should choose the prescriptive method because there's two methods here. And I'll walk you through that in the next slide. I'll walk you through how how I would fill out this form. But basically I'm sorry, did anybody say anything? Sorry. I would fill out the lighting power density calculators. I would also fill out the percentage of Energy Star appliances on the job as it compares in wattage as it is compared to the non-Energy Star rated wattage in the project for appliances. Then we move on to percentage of spaces with lighting controls, HVAC controls, AEDG compliance, and then we would submit the actual lighting power density calcs, whether it's your comp checks, if you're in New York City, as well as your lighting cut sheets. We're going to be walking through the actual template. And here, this is the prerequisite template, which also applies to the actual credit, the regular credit. So most projects, again, fall under commercial interiors or retail. For the purpose of this, we're going to go with commercial interiors. We'll select our measuring units. Here we're using Imperial. And then see there are two options. First option is the energy simulation, which is essentially an energy model. If you were to actually have an energy model made for this project, you would select that option, and then that would basically give you the opportunity to transcribe the results of your energy model onto this template. So if you select that, and option 2 is a prescriptive compliance path, which again, you will ask you to document compliance using the other forms, which is the lighting power density calcs and other calculators that will show up in this template. So here, show you what happens with option 1. When you select that, again, you see the template changed, and it basically gives you the point allocation for the percentage of improvement over the ASHRAE baseline. Here, if your energy model says that it's a 20-point percentage improvement by cost, then this project would yield up to 22 points. The advantage of doing that is that you have way more additional points to achieve. The prescriptive compliance path, you can only achieve up to 16 points. But when you select option 2, you can select whether you have target finder performance results. If you do, which is an EPA software, you can upload a screenshot of that. If you're unable to do it, you select the second. But then you move on to your interior lighting power. Definitely select the space-by-space approach, as it is way more vague and difficult to apply a whole building lighting power density allowance for this tenant spaces. We definitely would advise you to select the space-by-space approach. And you'll select, verifying that you are measuring against 90.1, and that the lighting has been designed to meet those standards anyway. When you move down to the bottom, sorry, I'm actually trying to stay ahead of this video. This is an actual video, I'm not doing it live, so bear with me. Lighting and power, this is the lighting power density calculation templates, the tables, where you basically create each individual space. You transcribe what is required by the ASHRAE standard for that particular space as far as wattage per square foot. You enter the square footage of the space, and then you calculate the wattage that you have allocated for that space. So let's say you've put in 11 fixtures at 60 watts each, then that gives you a 660, and then this will automatically calculate the installed lighting power, and then it will compare the installed lighting power against the allowed lighting power. and then it will make a determination as to what the percentage of improvement is. If you have any special lighting, let's say it's a jewelry store or anything that requires high display lighting, there's different requirements on the ASHRAE that, a higher wattage allowance for those types of lights. Any additional control methods that basically improve the energy efficiency. And here at the end, it basically shows you that at 25.99% improvement, on the right here, it tells you that at 25, you're able to get 4 points. So 5% prerequisite, 10% 1 point, 50% 2 points, and you go on until 4 points. Moving on, you enter the Energy Star rated equipment. So particularly equipment that serves the space, whether it's microwaves, TVs, anything like that, refrigerators. Here we're showing 2 microwaves at 1200 watts each that do not fall under Energy Star rating versus Energy Star rated equipment, which is a refrigerator. You have 4 refrigerators that each are 1,000 watts. That basically gives you 4,000 watts versus 2,400 watts that are Energy Star rated. This gives you a result of 62.5%, and you must meet 50% for the prerequisite and 70% or more for 1 point, 90% for 2. So here we wouldn't get that point. Moving on, if your project involves anything to do with building envelope or HVAC, then you would follow you would ask to follow and complete the AEDG guideline worksheet. That is one of the supplemental documents here. And the AEDG guidelines, you usually select the Advanced Energy Guide for large box and retail buildings. We don't have schools or hospitals, or maybe small to medium office buildings. But again, here, if your project has zoning efficiency and controls, as well as equipment efficiency that are outlined in the AEDG guidelines, you select those and you'll get additional points. We move on to lighting controls, where you basically would be able to demonstrate compliance based on the wattage, what amount of wattage is being controlled by a daylight sensor, an occupancy sensor, a vacancy sensor. And this basically will create a determination, a calculation, basically letting us know what percentage, as far as wattage, is being controlled by daylighting, what percentage is being controlled by occupancy, vacancy. So in the first one, 85 gives you 1 point because it's above 25%. In the second, at 48%, you do not get a point because you need to meet 75% or more. At the bottom, where you have a special circumstances box, we ask that you again submit, basically guide us to where the drawings or any backup documentation can be found, or if there's any clarifications or things that you need us to know about the project that will help make a determination on applicability or not. Finally, you sign the template and date it. Moving on. And so this is the typical backup documentation for that, which is, again, if you have a lighting compliance calculation by ComCheck is fine, and then cut sheets for the fixtures, much like the water use. Cut sheets showing what the wattage are for the fixtures that are being claimed. Then we have the material and resource credit. These tend to be some of the least sought after credits because people believe that they're very difficult to achieve. Now, while this is typically a credit that is done in construction, we actually accept and encourage this to be done as a design credit because we will not be able to audit it during construction. So for the BPDO, BPDO, which is the Building Product Disclosure Optimization Credit, we look at the Environmental Product Declarations Credit. Basically, here we're asking you to provide products that already have EPDs done by the commissioned by the manufacturer. So we'd ask you to provide the completed credit template that identifies the compliance strategy, provides the results of the materials calculator. Again, this is another template that has an attached materials, a BPDO calculator, where you're basically able to list the number of materials, the types of materials, and what type of EPDs. then this will make a determination as to what is the weighted number of products with EPDs. Now, for a typical lead submission in 4.0, this credit required a very onerous 20 materials from 5 different manufacturers. This made it one of the least sought after credits. At 4.1, they reduced that to 10 materials. Now here at the Port Authority, like I said, there may be projects like a small 1,005 square foot, store that it doesn't have that many materials to begin with. We will make a case-by-case determination. So let's say you have 7 out of 10 materials, or 5 out of 7 materials. So a decent percentage of the materials that you do have EPDs, then we will make a determination to actually give you those points. But this is again because you are clearly demonstrating best efforts within your scope of work to adhere to the spirit of the guideline. This is an example on the left of what a BPDO calculator looks like. And again, here, this is basically letting us know that all of these different materials listed on the left with all the EPDs listed in the center are basically weighted to come out to a nine materials calculation. And again, at 9 materials, depending on the size of the project, you'll very, very commonly get points for this. Another example of construction-based credit that it would be typically submitted to the USGBC in the construction review process. We would ask that you submit it to us as a design review, and the way to do that is you would provide us with, aside from the completed credit template, you would provide us with either an excerpt from the actual construction indoor quality management plan that is generated by the contractor, if you already have a contractor in place, or you would provide an excerpt from the contract documents, such as a project-specific specification section where the requirements of this credit are made part of the contract. So basically, Division 1, lead spec that requires this to be, part of the project. This is an example of what, an acceptable indoor construction air quality management plan, if that's the route that you would be submitting, would be. Again, it has to follow the SMACTA guidelines. And now we move on to typical credit template backup and documentation. Credit template backup and backup documentation tips. So some mistakes is projects do not attempt all applicable and achievable credits. There are sometimes that interior design projects can utilize base building components to meet select credits. The PAA can provide location and transportation credit documentation for many facilities, not for all. Water efficiency credits. Let's say you're a concession in a terminal, you do not have bathrooms in your actual tenant space, but you are served by bathrooms that belong to the terminal nearby. So within, any terminal, whatever bathrooms your full-time employees use and customers use, you can actually achieve points for that. And here, like I said, water efficiency credits can be achieved if the project is served by base building bathrooms. We encourage you to reach out to the facility for the water fixture, I'm sorry, there's a misspelling here, for the water fixture use information. Projects without HVAC scope sometimes don't even attempt advanced refrigerant management or optimized energy credits. That is a mistake, because in the refrigerant management, you can actually achieve points by demonstrating that, let's say if you have refrigeration equipment, not necessarily HVAC, but refrigeration equipment that has more than a half pound refrigerant in it, if you can demonstrate that those refrigerants are in fact approved refrigerants per the guidelines, these will be able to achieve points. And as well as for optimized energy control, optimized energy credits, there are, like I said, there are other aspects of it, aspects of that credit that should be attempted. Tenants are encouraged also to visit the USGBC website for applicable innovation credits and, very important, regional priority credits. Regional priority credits are basically like free points, low-hanging fruit, that are given to the project based on its region. The USGBC prioritizes certain points depending on what region is in. So definitely research, do a regional priority credit lookup and put in your credit rate, their lead credit rating system that you're using. In most instances is the CI project. And then you type in your project zip code and it will let you know which points are available here. So if you meet the base credit, if one of the regional priority credits that comes back is water use efficiency, if you meet the threshold of points, let's say it says, water use efficiency with a threshold of 5 points. If your base credit of water use efficiency, achieves 6 points, then you automatically get the regional priority credit. Another few common challenges that sometimes happen that creates additional rounds of review is the sustainable design submission sometimes doesn't get properly downloaded from eBuilder. So if you do submit a sustainable design submission, just make sure that you are writing that in your credit responses, so that if it's not there, then we know to double check to make sure that it was downloaded from eBuilder properly, because it has happened that in some instances the tenant has had to go to another round because there was an error in the downloading of the documents. Other times, though, on the other side of that coin is the tenant will tend to submit a design submission folder that is full of blank documents. The tenant coordinators won't jump into the weeds of the actual sustainable design submission, but they will see that there is a sustainable design submission folder. So they will automatically assume that there is an actual submission. But when I open it, it's just full of blank templates and checklists. And they basically just copied over the files that they downloaded from our SharePoint access. And then, like I said, lastly, is that design versus construction credits in a typical lead submission. We ask that projects under 20,000 square feet achieve construction-based credits during the design review process by making the requirements of the credit part of the construction contract, such as credits that fall under this category are construction and demolition waste management, construction and indirect quality management, and the material optimization credits. There are other instances where projects do attempt to take credit for things that are not applicable to them because they are only by the base building. In this instance, it would be things such as the envelope. Let's say you are a concession in the middle of the floor plate of the terminal. It is not appropriate for you to claim credits for the building envelope or the HVAC efficiency controls of the main building if you do not have any efficiency controls inside of your own space. Let's say the terminal did in fact do an indoor air quality assessment upon its completion. You cannot claim credit for that because you're actually making a construction intervention into that space. So if you're claiming that credit, you will need to have that quality assessment done for your project. So like I said, some of these credits actually require project-specific achievement. And then there are projects not meeting credit performance thresholds. There are projects with limited number of construction materials that can demonstrate best efforts to adhere to the guidelines. This is basically what I was saying earlier, that your scope may not support the number of projects that the template claims are required to meet compliance. But we will make a case-by-case determination based on the scope of work, the size of project, and the amount of materials that are actually in the project to make a determination on whether or not you are making best efforts, and that can certainly yield points. Any questions? This is the end of my rant.